This is the Crossfire Podcast, brought to you by Outlaw Legacy. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We have a special guest who joins us from Kentucky.
Lexington-ish area.
We are excited to have him on. He is a longtime friend of Amanda and mine, and just an all-around good person, and his name is David Hayden.
Yay, David!
I only knew him as Yoda for like the first couple
That's
of
true.
years.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I don't remember why we started calling him Yoda, but we...
I think it had something to do with the Star Wars was getting put out by Disney and stuff.
Or he just like drops lots of like wisdom.
Yeah.
I think that's what...
Well, he's definitely a person that knows a lot. He's very well traveled, has a lot of experience in food industry, and he's a foodie. So
I think you guys are going to like this one. He's got the best stories.
yeah. All right. So let's jump right in and we will get going with the podcast.
Started.
Well, thanks for joining us, David. We really appreciate you coming onto our podcast. And I think we told you a little bit about it, but basically this podcast is to share stories of our colleagues, friends.
People we find interesting and really like.
And we invited you because we saw you the last week and we were like, man, you're perfect for this. And and so you have an interesting story. Amanda has known you for a long time, and then I came in, and when we started dating, and you've been a great friend to us, and we really appreciate your friendship. So, but let's get into it.
Yeah.
So what's our first question?
Well, let's start with an intro. Who you are, what you do.
Okay. Well, as you all know, I'm David Hayden. I'm a meat scientist. To all your listeners out there, that is a thing. Get that random question a lot, especially when you're sitting next to a random person on an airplane and they ask what you do, and they say, oh, I'm a meat scientist, and they look at you really very strange like.
I bet.
But grew up in Western Kentucky on a cow, calf, and poultry operation, previous tobacco farm, and found my way through studying animal science to the world of meat science. And now I work for a company called JBT that produces and manufactures meat and food processing equipment all over the world. So it's a pretty fun adventure. I get to hop on an airplane typically every Monday and come home every Thursday or Friday. So you caught me at a weird time that I'm actually working from home this week. So I'm not jet setting, not until tomorrow anyway.
Cool. So what do you do in your job?
So I work with big processors, typically big processors, customers like the big Tysons and Cargills and Foster Farms and Smithfield Foods, those types of customers all over the country, and help them in advancing their technologies and the development of new products utilizing new technologies and equipment. So that kind of keeps me pretty busy, and I'm able to work with various business units throughout these companies. I work with their marketing groups. I work with their research and development groups. I work with their operations groups out on the floor, on the plant floors. And I work with their sales groups to help them get from point A to point B as efficiently as possible, utilizing the technologies that JBT can bring to the table. It's a unique position because I may be in a hog plant one day, a beef plant the next day, a catfish plant the following day, and a deli meat plant the next day. So the facets of our industry, of the food industry, they runs quite deep. And within the species, I work with all the species if it's a product that you consume.
Wow. Okay. So why meat science? Like how did that spark your interest? Like What little kid is like, oh, I want to be a meat scientist? Like, how did you
No
end up
little
with this
kid says
path?
that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. So, I growing up on the farm in Western Kentucky, I had every desire, like I think every little farm kid at some point, to be a vet. And I was going to go. I mean, I grew up just knowing that I was going to be a vet. And I showed horses. We showed cattle, toted the horses all across the country, showing. And it's just I had this passion for animals, and I still do have that passion for animals. But I learned real quick in high school, later in high school, that when Fluffy gets hit by a car at 2 a.m., it doesn't matter what you're doing. You have to go save Fluffy. Well, my first question is, why was Fluffy in the street at 2 a.m.? First off. And if I'm having to ask the question before I go save Fluffy, it's probably not the right road for me. So I learned pretty quick that veterinary science, I have my hats off to every vet out there. I have so many that I went to school with. But it just wasn't the right road for me. And to be honest, I stumbled across meat science as an accident. I attended Murray State University, where I studied animal science, predominantly live animal production, food and meat animal type production. And it fit with my background, growing up with a cow-calf operation and a poultry operation. And I was approaching my senior year. And honestly, I had no idea what I was going to do, and no clue. I just knew that I've been in school this is my 4th year, and I need to figure something out. So the first semester of my senior year, I did an exchange program, and I went to Oklahoma State University for a semester. And it was a great program because it allowed me to take classes that OSU offered that Murray State didn't have the capability of offering. Murray was a small school. There were only about 12,000 students there.
Oh, wow.
And going to Oklahoma State was a very eye-opening experience. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. I'm a senior in college. I've been at Murray for 4 years. I've got my friends. I'm kind of on top of the world. I was involved in everything. I was showing my horses still, barrel racing all across the country, training barrel horses. And I showed up in Stillwater, Oklahoma with 2 horses in a trailer and everything that I owned in the horse trailer. And I didn't know a soul. Did not know a single person in Stillwater. I just knew I got accepted this program. They had some interesting looking classes, and I was going to go to school there. I had to live in the dorm. I was a senior living back in the dorm.
What dorm did you live in?
I don't even remember what it was called, to be honest. It was right across the street. It's kind of on the outskirts of campus, and it was right across the street from the stadium.
Oh, okay.
Over back there. I think they've torn it down since
they have,
at this
yeah.
stage.
Yeah, they tore it down for the new sports complex or whatever that they have going back there. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I jumped online. Thank goodness, Google was a thing still then, and or it was just becoming a mainstream source of communication and research for your research and whatnot. And I found a barn to house my horses, and I was going to OSU, and I took my first meat science class, and I knew that I had one more semester left at Murray after I did my semester at Oklahoma State. And all of a sudden, I knew what I was going to do for a living. I was going to go back to school and get a master's in meat science. For me, it was the full circle. I've worked on the live production side for so long. I wanted to understand our food system from conception until consumption. And this was the perfect route to bring everything together, was meat science. And it was, that was probably the best semester of my undergrad career.
Cool.
It is where I met I began to meet my lifelong friends. I told you I lived in the dorm. I say that very lightly. 3 weeks in, I met some friends. My friend Casey George, who's now Casey Arthurton, just got married, and I slept on her and her roommate's couch that whole semester. That was my permanent residence. That's where I slept. She had a sheet pelt. I laid on the couch, and that's where I slept every night.
That's awesome. Cool. Yeah, we know Casey. Okay, so then you went back to Murray, and then you came back to OSU for your master's, right?
I did. Yeah. I remember I had to graduate, so I had another semester left. Finished that, but it was an awkward time of the year because I was technically. I told you wrong. It was not the first semester of my senior year. It was the second semester
Oh,
of
so
my
you didn't
senior
have to
year.
leave.
So I did 4.5 years of undergrad.
Okay.
I had one semester left I had to do. And so because it made it an awkward time to graduate, I graduated Murray. I went back home to Western Kentucky and worked on the farm for a semester in the summer. And then I was accepted into the grad program and moved back to Oklahoma. And I did 2.5 years, well, 2 years of graduate work, and then I started my PhD, but my professor left and encouraged me to leave and go get start my career. And I did that, but I ended up staying in Stillwater for 6 years because I loved the town. Because I met people like you.
Yeah, and you made it hard to leave.
Yeah, because when Amanda graduated and left to move to Texas, you were working for a company there that was based in Stillwater, or not based in Stillwater. That's right.
No, so it wasn't based in Stillwater. I had two options when I graduated. I had two options on the table. I could go work for a company, or I could go work for Conagra Foods. I had an offer on the table to move up to Omaha to be a research and development scientist for them, or work for a company called WolfTech. And WolfTech was an equipment company that made meat injectors, meat portioning equipment, and marination and cured meats type of equipment, brine systems, macerators, massagers, things of that nature that you utilize for making deli meats. And if I chose the job with WolfTech, I could stay in Stillwater. And I may or may not had just met my significant other about a week prior to this. So that was kind of coaxing on the side of wanting to stay in Stillwater.
Easy decision.
Or I could move to Omaha to work for Conagra. And I don't know if y'all know about Omaha, but it winters in Omaha pretty hard. And I don't do winter very well. So it was kind of a no-brainer. Stillwater winters are mild, and I was really laying a foundation too at the time, even though I was graduating, of meeting and coming together with some of the friends that I still have today. Mm-hmm. I mean, you guys being part of that group too, and so many of the folks that Amanda you went to school with that are still my friends today, and I'm very, very glad that I stayed in Stillwater, or I would have missed out on all that. I would have missed out on these friendships that we developed along the way, even though I was not in school, I was working, but y'all were my people.
Yeah. So it was and it didn't feel any weird because you weren't going to, I don't know. I feel like we all went to class and then we got together on weekends or evenings or whatever. And there wasn't anything different about it. But the timing was right. It worked out for you, and definitely worked out for me in meeting you guys. So yeah, don't cry.
No, I mean, and it was great too, because even from there, after you left to go to Lubbock, we came and visited you in Lubbock, and saw you there, and it was it's like 4 hours away, 4 or 5 hours away from Stillwater to Lubbock or something. It wasn't terribly far.
It was like 7,
yeah.
But that's what I told my parents it was 4, so it's okay. Yeah, when I would go visit Craig, I'm like, it's only like 3 or 4 hours, and it was 7. So. Okay.
But I had to push myself out of my comfort zone to do what I did and go to Oklahoma State. But it was the best decision I made for not only my personal life and the people that I met along the way, but for my career. Since then, since I started with WolfTech, I started 10 years ago, almost 10 and a half years ago. And my company, about 7 years ago, WolfTech got bought by a larger company called JBT. And JBT is a big company. It's publicly traded. We do much more than just meat. So we've got a hand in the liquid foods market, or in the liquid foods area of the food industry. We've got a hand in the aerospace area. This is a lot of stuff that JBT does. So that, inadvertently, it was a great move because being with this larger company allowed me to grow as an individual throughout my career, which was great.
Cool. Okay, so you mentioned you travel often every week for work. Give us
How
some.
exhausting, by
Yeah.
the way.
So wait, you once told me, it was not that long ago, you told me how many days of the year you travel. What is that, like 300 plus?
Oh my gosh, it would be close to that. Now, of course, pandemic year doesn't count. Last year was a weird year, but I try to keep track of my flights. I average about 165 to 175 flights a year, and last year I did about 75 flights.
Yeah.
And hundreds of nights in hotels. So it makes for really fun and free vacations.
Yeah,
when
I'm
we
sure.
decide to go
So
on
that
vacation.
that leads to the next question is where do you like to go?
Oh man, that's hard. That's a really hard question. I love coming to California. I really do. Mainly because you guys have wonderful weather. And I love your valley because I think in my eyes, it's the best of all the worlds. You can be at the coast in a couple of hours. You're surrounded by mountains and you're surrounded by agriculture. And to me, that's just the mecca of everything, right? I love my mountains. I love the beach. I love the coast, and agriculture is my life. I think aside from there, one of my favorite places is coastal Virginia. It is a beautiful place. I mean, here in the United States, I'll say here in the U.S., one of my favorite places is coastal Virginia. There's a lot of meat processing over there, hogs and poultry, and there's a lot of vegetable processing over there actually as well, vegetable farming. When you get over to the Delmarva Peninsula, it's away from the bigger cities. It's very country. It's kind of where colonial America meets the charm of the South. You have the big plantation homes here and there, but you also have this very colonial architecture and the old homes that are there. And, where I typically go 20 minutes up the road is Jamestown, like the Jamestown, where our country started, So it's a very interesting place, especially if you like history. It's a unique place because you've got the warm weather still too.
Yeah.
So they don't have bad winters.
That's cool. Okay. And did you travel internationally as well with work or for work?
I do. Yeah. So I used to go to Mexico a lot. Well, even when I lived in Stillwater, I went to Mexico all the time. And I can't even tell you how many times I've been. And I go to the most not great places that people go to Mexico for. Okay. It's not like I'm going to Cancun or Puerto Vallarta or anything of that nature. It is hardcore Mexico meat plants. And I have learned so much by interacting with my customers down there. I have a good set of colleagues that are based in Mexico. They've taught me a lot. And it really opened my eyes to different ways of processing meat and providing wholesome protein products to meet the needs of a particular market. And, a lot of the stuff they do there, you wouldn't see us do here, but it works for Mexico, right? So I really enjoyed going there. And actually the first day of my job, this is kind of a fun story. The first day of my job, I was on a plane to Germany.
Wow.
I was supposed to start
Jumping in with both feet there on that one.
Yeah, pretty much. It was a little intense. I'm not gonna lie. So I was supposed to start on a Monday and go to New York for 2 weeks, and that's where our office was, and our manufacturing site was up in upstate New York. And my boss, who I was going to be working for, he called me up on a Wednesday, the Wednesday before I was supposed to start. He said, "David, this is Dale." He said, "You were supposed to start on Monday, right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm flying up to New York." He said, "Okay, do you have a passport?" I said, "I do." He said, "You have any plans this weekend?" "Not really." And he said, well, okay, I changed your flight. You're going to meet me in Frankfurt, Germany on Saturday. I mean, you want to talk about a jaw hitting the floor going, oh, hell. Like, what is going to, like, in Frankfurt? I said, well, my phone is obviously not going to work over there. He said, I'll bring your phone. Meet me under the big sign in the Frankfurt airport. Click.
Holy
Okay. The
Shit
big
my
sign
pants.
in the Frankfurt airport. Well, it was a trip from hell. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It was terrible. I remember flying from Oklahoma City to Washington Dulles, little plane, United Airlines, and it was like the 2x2s, right? When you on the small planes, and they made us kind of all sit in the middle because we're weight and balance because it wasn't very full. There's a big old boy in front of me. He just slept. He was in a coma the whole flight, and I was sitting next to this guy, my bag under the seat, and we didn't more than hit the ground in Dulles. And that old boy in front of us woke up, looked over to the empty seat next to him, and just started throwing his
Oh,
guts up.
no.
Like, oh, I can't even make this up. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, it's happening? And so, of course, I grabbed my bag real quick before it was covered in vomit, and then, threw my shirt up over my nose, so I could, and got the heck off that plane as fast as I could. And then, I had a couple hour layover, and I am anxious, right? You're anxious, you're excited. I've never been overseas, and I'm going there to meet this guy under this big sign in the airport. And I get on the plane. It was like configured a 2, 5, and 2, and of course 2's in the middle row in the middle seat, like this kid here is. And I'm surrounded by Eastern Europeans who haven't bathed in a week, I'm pretty sure. Like, I mean, I just could not sleep. This whole, this flight all the way from DC to Frankfurt, could not, just anxious and watching TV and just everything. So I got off the plane at 8 a.m. and I'm dead. I mean, my eyes are bloodshot. I look like hell and dragging in there. Well, I found the big sign at Frankfurt Airport, and here comes Dale. Of course, he flew first class, and he slept all the way there, and he was bright-eyed and happy to be there. And he looked around. He said, well, you made it. And I said, yeah, yes, sir, I made it. And he said, well, we're in Germany. We should probably have a beer. And I'm like, it's 8 a.m. It is 8 in the morning. He was like, yeah, but we're in Germany. So we sat down and had a beer, which turned into 2. And then we waited for our Mexican customer. And she sat down, and he said, well, we should probably order another round and have some sausage. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to last. I'm just going to go to sleep now, mid walk or something. And we had a 3-hour train ride after this. And he before we got on the train, he told me how to navigate the train system in Germany. And he said, oh, by the way, you cannot sleep until 8 o'clock tonight. If you do, the rest of your week will be screwed up. You have to stay awake. You have to stay awake at least until 8 o'clock. So we get on this train, those high-speed rails, and it put me, of course, right to sleep. And I just happened to wake up to see the back of Dale's head as he was getting off the train. And I was like, you were going to leave me there. He said, well, I told you not to sleep. And I was like, it doesn't matter. You were going to leave me on the train. So needless to say, I didn't get left, but it made for quite an interesting first week of work. But we made it. I made it alive and unscathed.
Wow. That's a crazy story.
And the fact that you went to Germany to meet your Mexican client.
So the story behind that is that our injectors that we sold, we represented, were all made in Germany. So we were going to that manufacturing facility to run some tests for our Mexican customer.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that was my introduction to international travel and my introduction to our Mexican agent, who I ended up spending a lot of time with going down to Mexico.
Gotcha.
Which was more international travel. But it was good. It was very good.
Okay, so one more fun part about the work travel. Where's the best food that you've encountered?
Okay, well, I'm gonna skip the work part of travel and tell you the Middle East is the best food I've ever had.
Okay. Wow.
That was a fun trip. I'm even supporting the Lebanese flag today on my shirt.
God.
So
But no, so a couple years ago we went to Beirut and toured throughout Lebanon, and we went to Istanbul, and I think that the Lebanese food was the best I've ever had, hands down. I mean, don't get me wrong, Mexico's got some good eats, like, no doubt, some good stuff, but it was so good. I have dreams of the Lebanese food that we ate.
What did you eat?
There.
What was it?
Oh my gosh, you would ask me that because I have no idea how to say some of these things. There were like these cheese dishes. There were these little flatbreads with all the seasoning on top. A lot of kebabs, kefta, kebi, even though that's a little bit kind of Israeli, kind of Jewish, but you know, it flowed over there into Lebanon too. They had these. Oh my God, the hummus. You never had hummus like you think you know hummus, and then you go to Lebanon and you're like, you don't know hummus. I mean, I don't know what they put in it. I don't know if it's crack or what, but it is good. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, okay. I think food kind of brings us into.
Well, I think that's why we were so attracted to David, is because he is a foodie, and we are too. I mean, we love
travel.
food, and we travel, and we love to explore everywhere we go. So I think that's a.
So tell us about your other ventures outside of work. What do you do? What do you like to do? Where do you invest your resources?
I know it's really kind of corny. I love to garden. I love growing things, and I have since I was a little kid. You know, when I was in high school, I had my own tobacco crop. Dad had his own. When the tobacco buyout hit, hit here in the U.S. and the government paid us to not grow tobacco, I started growing my own vegetables. Had about a 5-acre garden, and sold vegetables at farmers markets and things. And then, even now, I'm not here enough to really grow any kind of vegetable or food, but grew a lot of plants and a lot of landscaping around the house. Went on a little adventure where we were growing topiaries and rosemary topiaries and selling those, and it was a lot of fun. And we kind of scaled that back a little bit. One of my biggest hobbies was barrel racing. Of course, I trained barrel horses for a long time, and I was still doing that when we met, Amanda. And I sold my last barrel horse probably 6 years ago, and I just recently kind of dipped my toe back in the horse industry and bought a mare, and she's got a baby on her side now. Her name is Frances. Yeah, I named her. Frances.
I like it.
She's gonna be a rock star. And traveling. I mean, you'd think you'd get old. It would get old, and it does. I enjoy being home. Don't get me wrong. But when I can travel for not have to travel for work and go see the world, I love that. I want to see every inch of this world. There is so much to explore. There are so many cultures to immerse yourself in. There's so much food out there to try. There's so much to be had beyond the borders of our country. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not discounting what there is to see within our country. I mean, I've been to 49 of the 50 states and just about every major city in the country. But the international travel and seeing what the rest of the world has to offer is one of the most exciting things to me. And I hoard hotel points, I hoard flyer miles so that we can take these trips. So we try to go on 1 or 2 trips every year.
That's
somewhere awesome. Different, somewhere unique.
Yeah. Did you think at 16, 17, 18 years old that you would be, traveling the world and experiencing all of these different things?
I guess I never really thought I would, especially when I was in high school. I was supposed to be that kid who graduated high school and went back and ran the farm.
Yeah.
And, no one really had, no one saw David Hayden as someone who was going to go to college, or if they did, they'd scrape by and then come back and farm. I didn't even see myself doing that. I saw myself as what everyone else saw me as I was, because my little brother and I, we went to a private school, a Catholic school, and there wasn't a very big agriculture presence at our school. So I don't know. I felt like we were kind of looked at as like, oh, those are the farm kids. Those are the kind of the rednecks, the kind of whatever. I hate that word, by the way. But I was like, you know what? That's not going to be who I am. I'm going to define my own self. I'm going to pave my own road. And I'm not discounting going back to working on the farm because it is a huge legacy of our families. It just wasn't in the cards for me at the time to stop my education and go back. The further I got into my education and the more people I met, the more diversified my surroundings were. And I loved it. I strived for that and I wanted to see more of it. And that's kind of what drove me to want to travel and see so much of the world. I did always say, I grew up listening to my mom's travel stories. She traveled around Europe and various other places before she married my dad. And I remember as a little kid her showing me pictures of places she went to in Germany and Paris, and I was like, oh my gosh, how amazing would that be to see these things? And that always stayed in the back of my mind of wanting to do that. Mom did that. Like, look what mom did, and look what she saw, and the stories she's able to tell us as little kids. And I was always fascinated by it. So I guess the answer is kind of yes or no. I mean, in all reality, I didn't, but in the back of my mind, I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of always the dream then, at that point.
For sure. But it's been wonderful, and I don't want to slow down. I mean, I can slow down when I'm old and almost dead. There's so much to do. I need to live about 5 lives. Is what I need to do.
Yeah, I could see you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So bucket list locations. Say top next 3 big trips you want to go on. What are they?
Next 3 big ones. I really want to go to Buenos Aires. Very bad. It looks amazing. The history there. I'm kind of fascinated about Argentina. I also really want to go to Vietnam. That's pretty high up on the list. And I want to go to Petra in Jordan. That looks amazing. So those are my top 3, I think, right now.
What's driving
also
you?
Santiago. Oh my gosh, I can't just put it for 3. Santiago looks amazing too.
So what's driving you to Jordan and in the Middle East? What do you like about that area?
The Middle East is totally fascinating to me. I never thought I would go to Beirut, and I'm so fortunate we did. Actually, Jake is the one who mentioned going to Beirut, and I told him he was crazy, that we shouldn't do that. It's probably a terrible idea. And then he kept pestering, and I was like, okay, I started looking into it and really diving into it and researching it. I'm like, okay, this looks amazing. So I think you're onto something here. And so we did that. And then we met a Jordanian couple on one of our tours. And just getting to know them, it was really awesome. And the more and more I dove into researching Jordan, the more and more, the history is a big part of it. We were in Lebanon. I've always seen Europe as a very old area, right? All of Europe is, especially compared to the United States. It's very old. Europe doesn't have anything on the Middle East. I mean, we were visiting ports that were 7,000 years old. We were visiting ruins that were built in two, like the number 2, year 2. You're not going to find that in Europe. And we were in towns and in places that are talked about in the Bible. It was something else. I think that's a big part of my fascination with the Middle East. And I didn't really have the fascination until I went the first time. Went to Lebanon, and that's when I really dove into researching more about the Middle East. It's a fascinating area, and it's a very diverse area. People think of the Middle East of dry, sandy deserts. Lebanon has beautiful lakes and waterfalls, and it snows, and they have ski resorts in the winter. They have cedar forests that are 3,500 years old trees in them. It's a very diverse region of the world, and it's kind of where humanity started, is that area.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
So
It's you're right. It's like super rich in history and diversity, and I don't think that it gets enough credit for what is there. So it's almost like the unknown, like it's mysterious and mystique, and it's I would have never thought about going to visit that area, but you have sold me on it. And
Yeah.
also, random fact, we used to have a Jordanian uncle. And so my aunt had talked about like, the family and where he came from and stuff like that. But as a kid, you're just like, oh, whatever. Yeah, he's from Jordan. And then you get older and you're like, whoa, like, what was it like? How did he get here? What was his family like there? You start to ask all the questions, and they're divorced, he's gone. But yeah, it's a place that I think a lot of people never really have at the top of their bucket list. So it's interesting that you bring that up, or that's at the top of yours.
well, it's interesting that you say that too, Amanda, because people's backgrounds fascinate me too. Just yesterday I was listening to your all's podcast, and it was yours, and it was your history and your childhood and your background, and you've got such a rich heritage behind you, and a rich Mexican heritage. You know where your people came from. My people have been here for forever. We did the ancestry DNA thing together, and it's very interesting. But my people came over in the early to mid 1600s. We had been in this country for a very long time.
Wow.
And to hear stories from other people who have, oh, my grandfather immigrated here, and this is what their life was like in their home country, or my great grandparents did, or even my parents did, or I did myself, that is so fascinating to me. My people have been in Kentucky for 200 years. We've been here for a long time. I guess I'm discrediting my own heritage, which I'm don't get me wrong, I'm very proud of my heritage and where we come from, but I so love listening to other people's stories and their heritage and where they come from and what their people did in their home countries, because everyone's from somewhere else in this country.
Yeah.
Whether you've been here since the 1600s or whether your grandparents or your parents immigrated here, everyone's here from somewhere else. And I love that. And that's why I love traveling too, it's like I get to step back to some of these people I've had these stories with and see where they come from and see firsthand where their ancestors came from and what life is like today.
Yeah.
In some of these places.
And in a weird way, travel, it kind of puts life into perspective, doesn't it? Like it makes you appreciate what you have, what you don't have, like where you're at in life. It has this like strange way of grounding you, and you don't realize that until you're somewhere else, like immersed in their culture and wherever, in their country. And it's almost like not a wake up call, but it like hits you and you're like, whoa, okay. Like what my problems that I thought I had, or, me freaking out about what I wanted and that I don't have, none of that matters. So it's got this, like, I don't know, at least for me, I definitely don't travel at the scale that you do, but where I have been, it brings that like sense of, I don't know, groundingness. Is that a word? I don't know. You know what I mean?
It is. And I think to add to that, Amanda, it's social media is a great thing and it's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
And you see people's posts on social media, and I have to like distance myself from it many times. And the things that they gripe and complain about, I just want to take them and shake them and be like, you have no idea. You have no idea how wonderful you have it. I mean, even if you're in this country and you're poor, like the difference of poor here versus poor in Mexico or poor in Lebanon, those are different definitions.
Yeah.
They are different scenarios. And it is, and so, I mean, our country here in the United States, it's so big, it's so vast, and there is so much diversity from end to end, north, south, east, and west, that we lose sight of there's a bigger world out here than just our country, right? And I traveling keeps me, like you said, it keeps me grounded, and I keep that front of mind a lot more, and I appreciate that. I'm guilty as the next person of griping and complaining about things that I should not be griping and complaining about. But
Oh, me too.
But-
I think that's just a
it's
human.
hard.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
it's hard.
That's just a human trait, I think. Yeah.
It is. It is.
Right. Yeah, that's I love hearing your stories because I know that you guys, when you go somewhere, you take it very seriously as far as immersing in the culture and and just diving in.
Oh yeah, you don't
Yeah.
go to a 5-star resort and
No.
you're like,
No.
hey,
No.
I'm here for the
We-
gram.
you
Like, you dive in.
You won't catch us laying on a beach. I mean, we were in Colombia just before the pandemic hit. We laid on the beach one day. That was it. Just one day. We took a day because we were forced to, because you had to take a boat to an island to sit on the beach. And we did that for one day, and that was it. I mean, we were going from town to town. We were diving into the local markets and eating stuff that Jake was not going to touch, but I ate it anyway. And, so, I probably, the food scientist and meat scientist in me says that's probably not very safe. Don't eat it, but I did it anyway. But you know what I mean? Why? Why not? You're there one time, you dive in, do it, and you got a story to tell. You either survive or you don't.
Yeah. Craig does the same thing about food too. Like, we've found ourselves in some sketchy places, and before I eat anything, I always look over at him because I know he's like evaluating the cleanliness of the place and like the cooking practices. And so we watch
so
him,
true.
and if he eats it, I'll eat it. But there have been times where he eats something and I'm like, what the hell did you just eat? And he's like, we'll see if I survive.
Yeah. Hey, sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's worth it. But yeah, I mean, how do you compartmentalize your thoughts on that? Because I mean, sanitation, what is safety, what's not, and here you go diving into some of these things that weren't cut on a clean table, they weren't cut with a clean knife, they may have been out a little too long, definitely not refrigerated.
I am picky when it comes to stuff like this because that stuff does bother me.
Alcohol, right?
Alcohol.
Cook your food to a good degree of doneness. No, I am that meat scientist though, that I have an arsenal of thermometers in my drawer in my kitchen, and I temp everything that I cook. It is going to be cooked to the perfect degree of doneness. Like, I mean, if it's chicken, 165 degrees. If it's even a casserole that I'm warming up, 165 degrees. I mean, I am very strict on that. And there's certain instances, there's certain places you can't really get around it. I mean, I ate some really questionable things in Colombia last year. I survived, thank goodness. But then I can tell you instances. Mexico's a rough place when it
Pretty
comes to
sketch.
some foods and meat processing and food safety. They have different standards of food safety than we do here in the United States. Cook your food. If you're in Mexico, cook it.
Yep.
Good. And I mean, I've walked away from a plant before and told them I was not going to be any part of making some of the products that they were making because it wasn't safe.
Wow.
And I went home. And I said, you can call me whenever you're better prepared and you're ready to do this properly. I said, because I won't be a part of this. But it's just every country and every culture is wired a little bit differently. Food safety is very top of mind here in the United States, and it's drilled through our heads. If you're studying meat or food science, it's not top of mind in a lot of other countries. I mean, and to be quite honest, that's one thing of being such an advanced country like we are,
Yep.
us and in Europe. If someone gets sick from something that you cook here in the United States and they get sick and die, you will get sued, and they will take everything that you have. If someone gets sick and dies in Mexico because of undercooked or not sanitary conditions, don't eat that. Johnny died last week. It's not good. And they move on. I mean, because they don't have the resources. They're not going to sue the company that made the product. It's a very different culture. And the swing from rich to poor is a lot wider in a country like Mexico than it is here in the United States. So the resources that they have available to them, they can't just sue the person that sold them unsafe product. It doesn't work that way. So it's a very different dynamic. So I think we look at those things very differently from country to country. Most of the European countries are going to be more similar to the United States. And once you get to Latin America and down through South America, it's going to be more like that story of Mexico, right? That's bad. Don't eat it. Like, just eat something else. We'll go to here and get this. It's handled much differently in how it's in the outlook of situations like that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I have a question too. This is definitely off topic, but what would you be doing if you weren't in the meat science industry? What do you think you'd be doing?
I think of that a lot. I don't know. I can't give you a straight answer on that, but I can tell you, even when I was, working so hard through grad school, I was still training horses and training burro horses and going to burro races all over the place. I loved it. And I even while I was doing my grad work, I thought, I even questioned myself, why am I going to school? Like, I'm going to be a horse trainer. This is what I'm going to do for a living. I realized real quick that horse trainers don't have a 401k. They don't have health insurance and those kind of important things that you kind of want to be comfortable and retire at some point. So that's probably a terrible idea. But we were just talking about this too. So horse trainers it's up there on the list, but I think I'd be a paleontologist. Isn't it really strange?
No, not really.
No.
I mean, I could totally see that.
Yeah, I
you.
can see that.
Like, it's totally fascinating to me, digging up fossils and dinosaur bones and all this. You've got the science behind it, which I love science, obviously, and it's very different, but it's so cool. Could you imagine digging up a dinosaur skeleton?
That would be sweet.
You're out there, you're hard work, you're working hard, and you're doing all this stuff. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Especially with the travel aspect. You could go anywhere in the world, and especially where you were in Lebanon, I'm sure there's a huge fossil presence, and there's all kinds of history. Not just paleontology,
unearthing old civilizations, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, career pivot?
Career pivot.
Maybe. Who knows? Midlife crisis. It's almost that time. I'm 35, so it's almost time for that midlife crisis.
You could be a YouTuber.
Don't get me started on that.
You could be a YouTuber doing that with all the travel and.
I've always felt like you, with the travel and the cool things that you do with work and stuff, that you would be a freaking awesome YouTuber.
I don't know what I'd YouTube though.
Your life, like
Yeah,
documenting travel, and then like having maybe like a side blog or something where you share like food tips, or when you're in Lebanon, eat at these places, or or airport,
or you're walking through a Colombian meat market and you're like, all right, I'm not gonna eat that.
Yeah, like what to watch out for travel tips, or at airports, like at DFW, avoid this area or go here or whatever, like trips on how to travel internationally or even just domestically, and how you should pack and what you should bring and stuff. Just so much content.
It would be kind of cool.
So
it would be
content
fun. I've got to say, I'm going to make a little pivot here, because you guys had me take the Enneagram test before I came on here, and it told me a lot of stuff about myself that I already knew. But it also helped me, after looking at the results, going, oh yeah, that is me, huh? How about that? But it also made me think, at the time I was just listening to your podcast yesterday. It made me think about some of the stuff Amanda was talking about on the Ural's previous podcast. And it was about how you guys were like your crew of people, right? Were like the kind of the black sheep of Ural's group. Yeah. I would almost guarantee, I would probably bet a paycheck that all of you all are the same Enneagram number, or very similar.
Yeah.
And you people are creative. I am one of the least creative people on earth. I am so not creative. I am a scientist, and I deal with data, and I deal with facts, and I can research, and I can set up experiments and go. And I think that's why you and I connected so well, Amanda, because out of that whole group, I feel like you've pivoted that way very well, and we can nerd out together so much. But you still have the creative bone that I didn't have. which frustrates me at times. But after looking at my Enneagram, I'm like, well, this is why, David, you're a number 7, and you're totally opposite. You're like the biggest extrovert on earth, and it kind of pointed these things out. I'm like, yep, it's me. It's me.
Yeah. When I was reading through it yesterday, and I just like opened it up real quick on my phone, and I was like, yep, I knew he was a 7. We talked about it briefly on this, and I'm like explaining it, and Dre's like, yep, and Craig's like, yep, checks all the boxes. But I think that I think you're more creative than you give yourself credit for, but you definitely have the personality to like be on these outlets. So you would be perfect for YouTube, perfect. Whereas you're right, I think a lot of us that like this core friends group, we're all pretty similar. If we're not the same Enneagram number, we're like similar, but we're all pretty much somewhat introverted or like really introverted. So yeah, I think like Danielle and I are the same number. And I'm a 5-wing 6. Kayla Ross is a 6. Amanda Gray's a 6. I'm pretty sure Jake is probably a 5 or a 6, somewhere in there. I'm gonna have him take it if he hasn't taken it already.
You send it to him. I bet he'll take it. We were talking about it yesterday, and I think Jake is. He said, "I'm pretty sure I'm a 5," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm pretty sure you check all the boxes." Like,
yeah, I think
in my head, you
too.
do. You're introvert. You're everything. I don't know how I got like engulfed in your all's introvertness of people. The extrovert in me, like it's like I guess opposites attract, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think they definitely.
It's so
do.
funny.
Yeah, so. What did you think? I know. Have you heard about the Enneagram before we sent it to you, or were you just avoiding taking it?
I had heard of it. I think I'd kind of taken a small version of it once before that was like a little slider scale or something, but I had not actually taken the actual in-depth test. And so that was that I enjoyed it. I mean, it took a few minutes, but I was like, I was really anxious to see what had happened. And it sure pinpointed everything that I knew about myself and then more, you know?
Yeah.
And it made me dive in to think, oh, wow. If this is this and this, well, this all makes sense now. It all makes sense in my head. And looking back at past opportunities and past things, I'm like, oh, wow, this is why all these things happened.
Yep. Yeah, and it really helps in relationships, but also in communication. If you know who you're talking to, you can change the approach so they can understand, or they can basically get how you're feeling, or how you can figure out how they're feeling about a certain situation.
Yeah.
So in Amanda's episode, you saw or heard about the 5 in a relationship with a 2.
Yeah.
And it's real. I mean, she's very introverted. She does not like to be hugged or surrounded or anything like that. She needs her space. And I'm completely opposite. I want to be like, hey, are you okay? And like,
2's love language is like talking and
it's
like
difficult.
Feeling and all of that. Yeah.
So once I learned that, okay, she doesn't need that, then okay, you change your approach a little bit to where it's a little bit more comfortable for her, and she's doing the same thing. She has to actually come out a little bit more
compassionate, because
I need that. I need reassurance where she's totally the opposite. So
Greg, me and you right there.
Yeah.
I've got like, I'm a touch person.
Yeah.
Give me a hug. Like come in for it. Like, this is it. Like I have to have that.
Right.
If I don't have that, it's awkward. It's weird for me. Without it, I don't know.
It's the opposite for us.
Yeah, Amanda and Dre, and B, when they came around my family, they're all huggers, big time hug. Come in here, we're gonna
sometimes like a kiss on the cheek if it's like a special moment. Yeah.
And these girls are like freaking out. They're like, "Oh my god, don't touch me! Don't touch me!"
Yeah. That reminds me.
I can only imagine that when you met my mom for the first time, she probably did the same thing, Amanda.
She did.
Like, she probably came in and like swooped in and like grabbed a hold of you and like, oh, don't do that.
Yeah, she did. Yeah. And it was at that point I was used to it, but also it was funny because your mom is Joan and my mother-in-law, Craig's mom, is also Joan. So, and they're very similar. So I always joke about I've got 2 Joans in my family. I've got the Hayden Joan and I've got the Russell Joan.
They're very similar in a lot of ways. So,
okay, well, 2 more questions to kind of wrap this up, and they're super random. Not related in any way.
I'm going to pause for just 1 second and close this door, okay? Before they start a vacuum cleaner.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm totally back. The gals are here to clean the house, and they're going to start vacuuming, so I figured I better shut the door.
Ah,
No
good
problem.
call. We canceled our house cleaner today because we're like, we don't need the dogs barking on all the excess noise. Anyway, okay. So question number 1. You have grown up in the ag industry. You've been immersed in it your entire life. What, in your opinion, what is the state of the industry right now? Where are we at? How can we improve?
How can we improve to the consumer too? Because the consumer is sometimes confused on how agriculture is.
Well, I guess let's start with give it a grade at where it's at right now,
Yeah.
and how do we improve? What, in your opinion, needs to change? And this is just general blanket statement. This isn't into the specific niches within the industry.
Okay. We're a D.
Okay. That's higher
We're
than
not doing a good job. I think there for a while we were CB, something of that nature. You know, when we really started utilizing agriculture or utilizing social media to tell agriculture story. It was a big run on that, right? And a lot of people were doing it. All farmers from all walks of life, it seemed like, were really pushing that direction. Social media is so mainstream today that we have not adapted to. No, we haven't adapted. We're still out there telling our story, right? That's not new anymore. But we are not listening to our consumers and to our customers. We are not being, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So we can listen twice as much as we speak. And I don't think us as an industry are doing that. We are also not very cognizant. I've separated myself from Twitter and ag Twitter for a while now. I used to be very, very active there, but it is one of the most toxic, nasty environments I've ever seen. And what I see the majority of our ag folks literally fighting amongst themselves. And we are so divided politically that it is really carrying over into our industry. And we are not inviting. We are not inviting people to outsiders and showing them what we're doing, and we're not listening. If we just listen to why our consumers are making the choices that they're making, we could probably make some headway. And if we came together and united ourselves as a one agriculture industry, we would get so much further than we are today. You've got so many different entities trying to fight for what they think is right with their own resources and their own money. And rather than coming together to fight for the same thing that's going to benefit us all, we get so much further if we would do that. But we're too busy bickering amongst one another and not listening to what our consumer is saying. Instead of listening to them, we're just telling them they're wrong.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're doing. They're not farmers. They're not ranchers. You don't know what you're talking about. No, you have to stop that. You have to listen to what they have to say and answer their questions, and never put them down, belittling and tell them they're idiots. It happens too much, way too much on social media, and it's turned what used to be what I thought was a great segue into introducing agriculture to the public through social media. It's turned it into just a nightmare, and our customers see us fighting against at one another and belittling one another. And can you imagine what they feel like if they're not even a part of this industry, and how when they see us talking about each other this way, what are we saying about our consumers? It's really, really disheartening. And I used to be very big into blogging and doing that, telling our story and putting agriculture to the forefront. But we've gotten too arrogant, and it's gotten to a point where, I feel like even to a point on social media where you either are you're a farmer or a rancher, aka a superhero, or you don't count.
Right.
Yep.
You know, no one else's jobs matter because ours are number one and the most important because we're feeding you all. You know what? When you get sick and go to the hospital, who's taking care of you?
Exactly.
You know, who's getting the fuel to your gas station? Their jobs are just as important as yours. They may not be farmers and ranchers, but it's not an inviting culture, and we're doing a horrible job at putting together an inviting culture for our consumers to actually learn something from, and to I don't know, be proud of supporting agriculture. They have no reason to be proud to support agriculture.
Yeah.
Not with the crap that they see on social media. It's disheartening. It really is. And we need to do better. We really do. And I'll be honest. I can preach all day. I don't do. I just avoid it because I don't have the time or the energy to get in these arguments and fights. I don't want to be a part of that. So I've just kind of separated myself from that agricultural telling your story via social media, as sad as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you see a few individuals out there who are doing a good job, but it's not loud enough or big enough for it to really gain steam. And I totally agree with you. It's a very uninviting industry, and I hate that this whole like superhero idea. I've thought of this for a long time. I hate the reference that they say, like, if you ate today, think a farmer, or, you ate because of us, we provided this for you. And it's like, how aggressive is that approach? Like, as a consumer, I would just roll my eyes and be like, oh, get out of here. Like, the conversation is so one-sided, and it's just ag talking and not listening to what the consumer wants to hear. And
it's more of a bullhorn more
and
than
yeah,
anything.
and they don't care. Blanket statement. They, agriculturalists don't care. So it's really sad because I think you're right. When social media first came out, it was used in a really great way. It was a great tool for ag to tell its story, and then it kind of just like plummeted. And I think a lot of that was like, okay, well, what do we do now? And we've always just been talking to each other and not to the general public, and we're stuck in this cycle, and it's like, how do we break it, and who's going to come along and break it first, and then we all like push on with them and push back. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm curious. We're asking just about everyone who comes onto our podcast what they think and what their opinion is, because this is something that is always on my mind in working in the industry, in public affairs and marketing, and even, farming. We're always looking at what can we do to improve, and even if it's just us making little steps to be better, how do we move it forward? So thanks.
So do you have any ideas on how to
Agree.
move forward?
I think too, and I want to throw this in there real quick, Craig, the political divide has not helped us at all. And I see way too much of the farmers and ranchers that, well, they don't know anything. They're a bunch of liberals. Well, you know what? Those liberals are still your customers.
They're still spending
eating
money.
your product.
Yeah, exactly. Uh-huh.
And they're a big enough demographic that they can change your market overnight. So you know what? You need to have, and why would they want to listen to you if you're not listening to them?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And we see that a lot in California.
Terrible. Go ahead.
Yeah, we see that a lot in California, where a lot of our, farming is done in the Central Valley, and a lot of ranching is done up north, and then you've got the Imperial Valley. But then we're outweighed by these two big metro areas, in LA and the Bay Area, and they are so disconnected from where their food comes from. But we're also disconnected with their shopping choices and why they eat and buy the way that they buy. And it's easy for us to be like, oh, the libs don't understand. They don't understand we need more water. They don't understand what it takes to, grow their vegetables or whatever. But it's a two-way streak. I feel like we have to listen to each other, and we have to be able to have this open conversation of like, okay, well, why don't you drink dairy, or why are you trending away from dairy? Is it because it doesn't, you think that it isn't healthy, or it doesn't make you feel good. Let's look at alternatives. How can we have this conversation on where we may not agree, but let's at least agree to disagree or something. So I don't know. That's We're not going to solve it today, but I was just curious what your thoughts were.
Wish we could solve it today. That would be wonderful. We wouldn't be doing this podcast. We would be on a beach somewhere because we'd be making all the money.
I was just going to say that. We'd be selling that shit. All right. And to wrap it up, what advice would you give yourself, 18-year-old you, about to graduate from high school, going off to college? What would you tell yourself?
I would have told myself to seize every opportunity that came in front of me. I felt like there were a lot of things that I may have missed out on, but then that's also my Enneagram number that I'm afraid of missing out on things. And I would have definitely told myself, and it took me a long time to realize this, you don't have to please everyone as much as you might want to. I'm a people pleaser. Some people aren't worth pleasing.
Yep. They don't deserve it.
You don't have to please everyone.
I love that.
I struggle with that today. I mean, it hurts me on a personal and relationship level because I spend so much time pleasing other people that I don't spend enough time for myself or my relationships. And all other people always come first, and it's tiresome. It wears you down, and you don't always have to do that. Yep. And I think that's really important. And I've only started figuring that out in the last couple of years, really.
Well, I'm glad you did. It's hard.
I'm trying. Still working on it, but we're trying.
It's easier said than done, but it is definitely one of those things that once you make the realization of, okay, I don't have to please everybody, and then you start practicing that, it's difficult, but the more you practice it, the easier it becomes, and it totally changes your life. So that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but I don't know, and I work in the world of, I have customers, I have clients, and just like you guys do, and your immediate, it's young kids. I feel like our age, we were drilled in customers always right. You go above and beyond, you do whatever it is for your customer. You know what? Even my customers, I've kind of adopted your lack of planning does not constitute an emergency on my part. Right. Like, here we are. Mm-hmm. We're here because you put us here. Mm-hmm. It's, I'm sorry I can't get you X, Y, and Z tomorrow, but you aren't my only customer. Mm-hmm. I've really had to start drawing these lines with my customers and putting that out there. And it's just been the last couple of years, I actually will go on a vacation and not do a thing for work. Like, I was standing outside of a bar in Istanbul in Turkey getting yelled at by a customer 2 years ago. And I finally cut him off and said, listen, I am halfway around the world right now, and there's nothing I can do for you. I'm sorry. And I said, I will make a couple calls and get you squared away, but there's nothing I can do for you right now. And so, that was really eye-opener for me, that Jake and my friend Caitlin, they were in there having a drink and having a great time. And where was I? I was sitting outside of a bar in the Middle East, or, in the middle of nowhere, halfway around the world, and I'm being yelled at by a customer. Is that necessary? Was that necessary at the time? Could it not have waited another week before I got home? So that's those types of boundaries are what I had to learn how to draw those a little bit. That people pleasing that I have in me, it burns, and I have to do something with it.
Yeah. Well, boundaries are a good thing. So
yep.
Yes, for all the boundaries.
We've had that conversation with other friends recently, and it's
a theme in our life right now.
Yeah, it's people have struggles with that.
Yeah.
Setting boundaries, keeping boundaries, staying off of other people's boundaries. It's
yeah, so relatable. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed the heck out of this.
Yeah, well, we'll have to have you back pretty soon, and we enjoyed it. So thank you so much, David. And
we'll do it anytime.
Next time you're out in California, make sure you swing by.
For sure. And thanks for having me last week. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was fun. It was great to see you in person.
In person.
IRL.
I know, and y'all need to get out here to Kentucky. We need to go do some bourbon touring.
Yes.
Yeah, it's on our list.
I got Woodford actually behind me right here. I don't know if you can see. Oh, there.
Attaboy. I like it.
My big head is blocking it. Anyways,
Okay.
talk to you later, man. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, well, thank you to David
That was great.
for joining us. And
That was good.
That was a very good piece of advice.
yeah, he's like I said, he's been around the world a lot, and he understands a lot of different cultures, and he understands how important relationships are. So
He knows that there's more to life than just the gas ranch. That's
Mike doesn't understand, but I get it. I get it.
It's
anyone who went to Woodlake High School, who had Doc as a teacher. Shout out to Doc. He would tell us in whatever class it was he was teaching that there was more to life than just the gas ranch. The gas ranch was a local gas station near the high school, and that's where kids used to walk to before,
That's all we have.
after,
and ditch.
and during lunch. No,
That's
that's
just
the-
all we have in town to go to lunch to, really.
Because the lunch period was it was short. It was maybe 30 minutes. So if you're walking, you can't drive at lunchtime. The gas ranch is the only thing in walking distance. So he always said there's more to life than just the gas ranch. And, you know, as a kid, you laugh it off or whatever, and then you leave the area. And I have found this many times where I've found myself in a different state or somewhere else, and I like chuckle to myself, there's more to life than just the gas ranch. So I don't think that people ever really think about it in those terms specifically, but there's more to life than your hometown. You know, there's more to life than Philpott, Kentucky. There's more to life than Woodlake, California. So David is a good example of that.
Yeah, some of the takeaways that I took from today is he had to have been the youngest tobacco farmer.
When he said that, I was so confused.
Yeah, I mean that's cool. I actually when we were there visiting Daniel and Danielle, which is his brother or sister-in-law, Daniel took me to some tobacco farms, and it's that area where David and Daniel grew up. It's beautiful.
It's pretty.
It's awesome. There's a lot of history there.
Yeah.
It's just it's great. We can't wait to go back. But yeah, tobacco was a big part of that area, and yeah, I can't imagine little David out there spearing tobacco plants and stuff, getting it ready to cure.
We're gonna need pictures.
Yeah, and he shared. We need to talk to him about pictures. But he shared with us some of the Roman ruins he saw
Oh yeah.
in the Middle East when he was there.
Yeah, when we saw him last week, he stopped by for lunch, and he was showing us these ruins, and incredible. And I can't even like comprehend that really. Like you see it in a picture, but it's like how
Yeah.
you know, and they were so big and still so well constructed, and it's just breathtaking, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought it was interesting that he would be a paleontologist, or, you know,
I think it totally fits.
Yeah, and I think part of Enneagram 7 is, you know, they're super curiosity, and they, like you, want to know how things work. And I think history and just location, geography, all of that is all intertwined in this profession, and I think that that's perfect for him. I can also kind of see you into that as well, but David definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And you know who else I can see doing that? Aubrey Betancourt.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think she probably does that in her spare time.
She's
With all of her spare time
these
that she
cool
has.
hobbies,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was cool. I really enjoyed that talk. So
thanks, David.
thank you, David, and
you.
see you in the next one, guys.
Toodles.
Thanks for listening. This is the Crossfire Podcast, brought to you by Outlaw Legacy.